Hey y'all, I'm Hope, and today's video is my mid-month wrap-up for April. I apologize in advance, you might hear some thundering. I'm gonna bring you back down. I moved my desk a little too tall. You might hear some thunder. It's just started thundering here in the last few minutes, because of course it did, because I needed to film. And so that means it's really gray out here too, which is part of why this lighting is so wild. But we're just gonna roll with it, because I almost forgot I needed to film today anyway, so there is that. But today's video being my wrap-up for the first half of the month, and I have very little to wrap up for the first half of the month. I finished exactly one book so far in April, which doesn't really surprise me because it's the end of the semester, so I've been doing a lot of writing. I had a paper due at the beginning of the month, and then I had a proposal due for the next one, like right after that. There's just been a lot going on. I'm not surprised I only read one book, and this one was Goblin Market and Other Poems by Christina Rossetti, which I read because I needed to read it for a class. I didn't need to read the whole thing, but I just decided to go ahead because it was pretty short anyway. So I read this. It's just poetry, with the longest in the book being Goblin Market, and then a selection of mostly sonnets and kind of shorter poems. And this was fine. That was kind of my main opinion on this one. I know a lot of people really like Christina Rossetti, and I definitely get why she was so influential and important as a poet in 19th century England, but she's just not for me. I'm not really a poetry person to begin with, so it takes a lot for poetry to really engage me and impress me, and this just didn't do that for me. I did actually pretty well like Goblin Market. I think that Goblin Market's a fun poem. It's really interesting. I think it's way darker than I anticipated, because I think sometimes it gets categorized as like a children's poem, and it is very much not a children's poem. It's pretty dark, and there's some pretty gross imagery in it and pretty intense moments. So I think that it's really interesting, and I enjoyed that one. It's more of a story, and I really liked the direction that took, and there was a lot of really interesting pieces in there that during my class we got to discuss, and I thought that that was really fun. So like the discussion really enhanced my enjoyment of that poem. For the rest, I found it to be very samey for me, because it's a lot of the same kinds of images. It's lots of like flower imagery, lots of stuff about death, and like either embracing death or seeking death. There's a lot of like spring and autumn imagery, and it just felt to me like the vast majority of the poems were very similar, kind of using the same kinds of ideas over and over and over again. And I just kind of got bored. I couldn't really keep the poems apart in my mind. There were a couple that I did like. There's An Apple Gathering that I really liked, which was one I needed to read for class. And then one I didn't need to read for class but really enjoyed was Thank You, John, I think. Or No Thank You, John. I think it's No Thank You, John. And it's basically like a rejection to somebody named John, like a rejection of love. And that one I thought was really interesting. The dialogue in it almost reads very modern, and I was really enjoying that one. I thought that that was a very interesting and fun poem that I genuinely enjoyed reading that one. But that was kind of it. Most of the rest, I just don't even really remember what was what, because first of all, I read all of it in like, an hour. It was like 88 pages or something, and I read all of it in a very short period of time. So that probably contributed to my inability to kind of figure out what was what. But a lot of it was just very similar imagery over and over again, and I think that was what didn't appeal to me. So that's all I finished so far in April. I have made some progress on some other things. I've read a pretty good chunk of A Shadow in the Ember, which is probably the thing I'm going to be reading next, that's going to be my main read for the next little bit, because I've got to get this read before I turn it back into the library, or at least I want to get a chunk of it read so that then whenever I get it checked back out again, I'll be a little further in and be able to like keep going from there. So I'm going to try and read a good chunk of that in the next little while, and I'm liking this more than I've liked some of the other From Blood and Ash and associated books. This is the first book in the spin-off, which I had found you were supposed to read in like publication order between From Blood and Ash and Blood and Ash and Flesh and Fire, because this spin-off series contains some like historical information that helps make sense of what's happening in the main series, which I think is an interesting concept. I think it's a little frustrating because the series are already so long, the books are so long, that all of a sudden now you have to also read the spin-offs to get what's going on. I'm having a better time in this one than I did in the first From Blood and Ash book, because that book has like no plot, and this one has a pretty engaging murder mystery that crops up very early, and I'm liking that. I'm liking the kind of love interest character. He's not been named yet, so I'm not going to say who I think he is, but I'm liking him. I don't care for the protagonist all that much, because she's basically like Poppy, but not. So I don't think she's that interesting. But a lot of the other stuff that's happening I think is interesting. So I'm having a better time with this than I did with From Blood and Ash. And I'm hopeful that I can read a good chunk of it. Hopefully I can finish it before I turn it back into the library, but at the very least I'd like to read like a significant piece of it so that the next time I get it back out I can, you know, be further along and finish it a little easier. The other kind of main thing I'm trying to finish right now is not the Blade itself, which is probably what you, if you had seen my previous videos, might be what you were expecting me to say. Because I've been reading that book for a long time. I am still planning to finish that one, but I have altered my plans a little bit for when I'm going to read it, and I've just kind of shifted things around a little bit to work a little better for my schedule. But the other one I'm currently reading is Woman Eating by Claire Kohda. This is another one I've been reading for quite a while, and I think it's just that I'm not totally vibing with the writing style, so I'm having a little bit of trouble getting really into it. But I do really think that the protagonist is interesting, and I'm liking some of the dilemmas that she's facing. So I'm enjoying this, I'm just not totally vibing with the writing style. But that's kind of what I got going on right now, and the things that I am hopeful to read in the next couple of weeks. I don't know how much I will finish this month. I'm getting very behind on my yearly reading goal, but it's fine. I anticipate having some extra time to catch back up in the summer, and I am hoping to participate in a readathon next month, so it'll all be fine. It'll all work out. I'm just very busy at the moment, and it's just not been a great reading month for that. Despite this being a very rambly video, I hope you've enjoyed it, and if you have, I hope you'll consider giving it a like, maybe even subscribing to see what comes next. I'm currently posting every Tuesday and Saturday, so there is more content coming soon, and I hope to see you in the next video. Bye.